Now, we have to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's the fact that the legacy media is dying. And I'm so happy the legacy media is dying. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this show right now. I wouldn't have a contract to do this podcast talking to all of you. As I said earlier, I'm so grateful to you for tuning in to our first episode. But MSNBC, no surprise here, their ratings are down in the gutter. Their ratings are in the seventh ring of hell. They are so low. And that's because MSNBC has lied to the American people for years. They tried to tell us Joe Biden was quick and sharp and doing cartwheels in private, right? They tried to tell us the border was secure. I was down at the border. I saw the people running across, okay? I saw needles and cards and IDs. The border was not secure. Go down to Arizona and Texas and talk to them. But MSNBC, it's their job to try and gaslight 5 angry women and their cats in their living rooms and urban areas and tell them that Trump is the boogeyman, he's Hitler, he's a dictator, he's Mussolini. And that type of rhetoric from MSNBC is why on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, someone tried to shoot him, right? MSNBC and the legacy media, they pushed this propaganda, they called Trump a threat to democracy, and then we all saw what happened. It was disgusting, tragic, and horrific, and it should not have happened. But Jen Psaki, she's apparently the new star at MSNBC. They're betting it all on this ginger. She used to be Joe Biden's White House press secretary. Now, what's interesting is when we were putting the show together, I was on the phone with my producer. I said, we need a picture of Jen Psaki and Joe Biden. She said, I can't find a picture of Jen Psaki and Joe Biden. Me trying to be a benevolent host, I said, I don't know. Can we go look again? I'm not trying to be too harsh on my producer. I said, can you go look again? I'm sure there's a picture of Jen Psaki and Joe Biden. We could not find one picture of Joe Biden, the president, and his White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, which shows us how insulated Joe Biden was. When Karine Jean-Pierre said she would go out there sometimes and hadn't even spoken to Biden, she was being honest, apparently. It is very bizarre that the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, we are scouring Google, and we cannot find a picture of Joe Biden with his press secretary. That would never happen with Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt is in constant contact with the president. She speaks to him multiple times a day. They're heading off to the Middle East this afternoon, right? It is insane. It is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs bananas that Jen Psaki has no pictures with the president, but her ratings are tanking. We have an article, right? We pulled up the stats because we're a little bit shady. We like to do our research. I'm like the CIA. I will dig and dig and dig, and let's look at these stats right now. So Jen Psaki, she has a new show called The Briefing. You're welcome for the promo, Jen Psaki, okay? She has a new show called The Briefing. It's in the 9 p.m. time slot, Tuesdays through Fridays. Rachel Maddow, she's on Mondays. I would love to just do a show one day a week and make $25 million. Rachel Maddow, in my next life, I'm coming back as you because she's getting $25 million and she does one show a week and then still complains that she has it rough and her network sucks. Okay. Now, Jen Psaki, she pulled in 1.2 million viewers. 139,000 of those were in the key demographic. That's 25 to 54. Now, I don't like that term. I don't like the term key demographic because to me, it's come one, come all to the Halloween ball. If you're 90, if you're 100, if you're 100 and freaking 50 and you have a Wi-Fi connection, you are welcome to come and watch my show. If you're under 25, if you're 18, 19, 20, you're interested in politics, come on over and let's have an open dialogue. But Jen Psaki, she was doing 139,000 viewers in that target demo. If I were doing numbers that low, I probably wouldn't have this show right now. But let's go on. The next day, the show took a steep dive down. Jen Psaki, she pulls in only 1 million viewers. She's lost 200,000 in total. She pulls in just 65,000 in the key demographic. So she's basically cut that in half, which means young people, this key demographic all the networks love, they turned on Jen Psaki and they said, this is a bunch of baloney. We don't want to watch this woman lie to us and gaslight us. And there's a reason this last election was the podcast election. Young people, they don't want to tune into MSNBC and the legacy media and be lied to and gaslit constantly and told everything is hunky-dory when it's not. That's why they're going to social media. It's why they're going to YouTube. They're tuning into Apple. They're tuning into Megyn Kelly. They're tuning into Joe Rogan. They don't want to go watch a bunch of lies. And Jen Psaki, she is also a liar. Allegedly, right? I'm not in her brain, but she seems like a liar to me because Jen Psaki, just last week, she tried to say, I didn't see any signs of Joe Biden's decline. I didn't see any signs of Joe Biden's decline. Maybe because you never saw him. Maybe because we can't find one single picture of you with the president who you are supposed to work for, Jen Psaki. So let's play a clip. Let's play a clip and then discuss.
I left in May of 2022, just for the facts here. And I have seen Biden once since then, when I took my daughter to the holiday party this last December after he had lost. And so I hadn't seen him in person during that period of time. I never saw that person, not a single time. And I was in the Oval Office every day that was on that debate stage. I'm not a doctor. Aging happens quite quickly. Were things that people saw during that period of time that were similar to that or would have been in a category of that? I don't know, possibly, right? And all these books are going to tell us.
Like, do you think that were they actively covering it up? Were they sort of in denial, or was that just a bad debate? Like, what is your read on that?
Well, this is what I mean about cover up is a very loaded term, I think.
Well, it means you knew that it was really bad and you're pretending otherwise versus you're deluding yourself, which I think is what people do a lot.
Well, I understand, but I still think it's like cover up is often like a crime.
Jen Psaki, the Mars rover could see that Joe Biden was in decline. Okay, he didn't know the temperature of the room he was in. Jill Biden, she was running cabinet meetings. She was sitting behind the desk on Air Force One. There was a shadow government running the show. All of these unelected bureaucrats, the last 4 years under Joe Biden, they were pulling the puppet strings and making decisions that made our lives exponentially worse. So Jen Psaki, you're also full of shit, and I'm happy to see that my ratings are gonna do better than yours. Ha 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 ha, Jen Psaki. So yeah, no, Jen Psaki, you are full of crap for saying, I never saw any decline. He seemed fine to me. There were conversations in 2019 in the presidential primary about how Joe Biden was not doing well. Allegedly, some of his own family members were trying to tell him, you should not run. Okay, you probably shouldn't run because you're really in decline and you're not doing well and you're showing signs of dementia, right? We had Joe Biden shouting out people in the crowd who were dead, who weren't even there. Joe Biden's like, hey, is Sally Sue in the crowd? They're like, no, she's 6 feet under. So that would tell you the guy probably is in some type of cognitive decline. And if Jen Psaki is not astute enough to see that, she probably shouldn't have her own TV show and she should have never been press secretary in the first place. But Joe Scarborough, of Mika and Joe, Morning Joe, a very famous show, or as I like to call it, Morning Wood, from the rumors I hear about what's happening behind the scenes. Morning Joe, back in March of 2024, here's what he had to say about 81-year-old Joe Biden's cognitive health. Let's take a look.
I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years.
This is the best version of Biden. The border is open. We have hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants pouring in every month. We've got wars around the world. We've got record sky-high inflation. This is the best version of Biden, even on policy, right? Joe Scarborough, you also seem like you're kind of full of crap and you're carrying water for your friend Joe Biden because you know he watches your show and you want access. But Joe Scarborough, be real. Be real for a second. That is the best version of Joe Biden, calling out people in the crowd who are no longer with us, who have gone on to greener pastures, right? This is a man who checked his watch as dead soldiers were coming home. I hate to be vulgar and bring this back up, but we can talk about Abbey-gate if we have to. We can talk about the horrific Afghanistan withdrawal. And now that I have this platform, we just might, because like I said, I'm going to have my foot on these people's necks from here until the end of time. Joe Biden, you were not in good shape. We can also talk about the cocaine that was left at the White House. Is that the best version of Joe Biden? He's got cocaine. You got topless trans people on the White House lawn. The border is open. We can take apart the cognitive decline, but the man was not doing well. Joe Scarborough, you need to go do some soul searching. Maybe you need to tune in to Spot On with Link Lauren and get the real rundown of what is happening.